All right, so just got the 709. I'm so hyped, but I wanted to preserve all the knowledge I've gained on this level um, by going through the level and just kind of talking through like the things I learned and what I did to get this time so that it could be preserved as a combination of like a guide and a combination of a guide and like just an explanation and just so people can get my reaction and so people understand what's going on because there's just like so much that it's hard to like we have the written guide, but it's hard to keep everything in there and keep it concise, especially with a level as complicated as this. And I just got it like 5 minutes ago. Oh, I need to close my bedroom door. But first of all, the big thing is skipping this initial cutscene. Obviously, if you're in an any percent run, you just want to skip it right away. But with this level, you want to skip it like right as it starts painting up right there. Now, I experimented with skipping it like sooner or skipping it later. But this is like the sweet spot I found. So the thing is that the sooner you skip it, um, the more leeway you have with getting past the goon at the top, the easier it is to get a good delay with him. But of course, every second you're not watching this cutscene is seconds less in the level. Like the timer doesn't start till the word start appears. And so the more of this cutscene you watch, the shorter your run is. And so you want to watch as much of it as possible, but still get past that top goon with a good delay. And also, if you get past him too quickly, one, you don't get enough of a delay and it's impossible to get past him later. But you'll also end up bumping into this goon at the bottom here. So I skipped it right there. A lot of the times I'd skip it just a little bit later than that, but because I had barely started doing runs today when I got this, I was skipping a little earlier just so it was easier to get past the first goon so I could get more runs in further so I could practice later parts of the level. Obviously in this run I had a really good click on that on the lever to pull it down. You know, obviously once the level starts you just want to go as fast as possible no matter what. With one exception, which I'll show later. But here is a big trick I learned. So you'll notice that my pointer is in the bottom right hand corner while I'm going up the elevator. And the reason that I'm doing that is because that's where I want to click after the little cutscene where Zach gets, knocked back. And I buffer that A press. So the second that I can control Zach, he starts moving. And I already have my pointer there. So he'll always walk the way I want him to. And once I started doing this, like even though it might be like a frame or two slower than just clicking directly on the flag, but it's so much easier and it made things so much more consistent that it was well worth it. And I'm not convinced it loses any time at all anyways, maybe like a frame or two, but it was way more consistent doing that. And then and this shows one of the many there's a lot of visual cues I used at the very beginning of the level to know what kind of pace I was on, so I had an idea of how fast I needed to go. The first is here, and I listened for the sound effect the of the elevator like hitting the. I don't think you can hear the sound, but I listen right here for the sound effect of the elevator hitting the second floor. And if it hits it right as if you can barely not see it hit it when you get a view of the treasure room, then that's like a good pace. And then with this one, I'd pay attention to when the top goon turns around during this elevator cutscene. And if he turns around like barely right before you can't see him anymore, then that's how I knew I was on a good pace. Here you can see this buffered click in action, and then I click on the thing right away. With this pull, it's RNG. How long you have to wait to grab it? I don't understand how it works because sometimes it's windy, but the wind just stops unless you grab it. And sometimes it's not. It's already not windy, and it still makes you wait a few seconds to grab it. So I honestly do not understand how it works, but for all intents and purposes, it's RNG. Even when I got really consistent at the beginning of this level, it's still RNG. And so that's a big factor. And so theoretically, you could skip the cutscene like a full second later, but then you would have to get good RNG with the flag, and you'd have to get perfect movement afterwards, and you'd have to get a really good lighter. So if you just know you're going to get all that stuff perfectly, then you could skip the opening cutscene later. But I skipped it when I did, so there's more consistency, and I know it's like a little bit later than Imprisoned skipped it, so I knew I was already getting a small, half a second edge up on him there. And then with getting this pull out, there's definitely a world where it takes like an extra couple shakes, which is really annoying. And then this is another visual cue I used. I'd watch this goon in the background and see when I could see him. So you could see that the screen has that fade, and he hasn't even passed the eye yet. If his head passed the little gray part underneath the eye, so I could see like the brown bricks underneath behind his head, that's why I knew that the run was already basically dead. If you can barely see them and then you play like pretty much perfectly after that, you can still get past the goon with a good delay. But if he like takes a full step forward after it, then the run's already dead and there's like nothing you can do. But I got really good RNG here, so I had plenty of time. And then this movement here is really tricky. You can see that he like walked up a little bit before he walked to the left. And sometimes I could get it so he'd immediately start walking perfectly to the left, and that helps. It's, and it only makes a little bit of a difference, but the window for getting past this top coon with a good delay is so small that that little bit makes a really big difference at the beginning of the level. There's definitely some glitches when you're going from, you can't click on the skull until you pass this door frame, and so that can be kind of tricky. I mean, the muscle memory was pretty insane by the time I got this run, but there's definitely been times where I clicked on it like too early and you get a funny little glitch where the camera pans down. But yeah, this lighter is a huge headache. It is consistent, but it feels inconsistent. Like sometimes, especially today and the last time I streamed, I'd get lots of runs where it would make me do an extra shake, make you do like a fifth shake with the skull, and that really sets you back. And if you're not careful with how you position the Wii remote, if you like rotate the Wii remote too early, it'll like start shaking it immediately. Or if you start shaking too early, obviously, and the skull hasn't finished rotating, then that can really mess you up. It's just really finicky and takes a lot of practice. And it feels inconsistent. It really is consistent, but even for somebody like me who's played this level for tens of hours, it can feel pretty inconsistent. I did test to see whether it was faster to grab the lighter right here or to go back and then pick it up, and this is quite a bit faster. So here, I noticed that by the time I get to the bottom of the rope, he hasn't turned around yet. And I know from experience and testing that you really want to get to the bottom of the rope right as he turns around. And so I notice he doesn't notice me until I get all the way over here. And I know that that means I need to delay him more. So I click right in front of there, waited for just a second, just to give myself a little leeway. And if you do it right, and it doesn't matter if you delay him a little more, it gives you more leeway. And if you're fast enough that you have to do this, then you're gonna have to wait for the goon at the bottom if you play well anyways. This movement here takes a lot of muscle memory, but it's really satisfying to get it really quickly. I got it pretty good there. I've definitely gotten it faster than that before, but that was a pretty good example of movement. And I clicked in front of the pot here because it won't let you click on things right after you move. And so I just found it faster and easier to click right in front of the pot and then click on the pot again. The spread self-explanatory. Clicking on the ladder there can be kind of tricky. I almost fumbled it there. This is another, that movement to like, is another one that I buffered. And then you can see I click behind the rock here, and then I click on the rock again right there. And then I get this really tight movement around the rock. If you click on it just a few frames earlier, or if you click on the rock like when you're all the way to the left, then Zach will take this really long path like around this pebble that's behind Zach right now. And it wastes time, and discovering this little movement trick made it way easier to get good runs past this next part. So obviously, because we're going fast, we don't kill the goon at the bottom here. But with this route, you like never run into him. The biggest problem is here when you have to wait for him a little bit. And this run was fast enough with a small enough delay that I did have to wait for him, but just a second there. You could probably get on that just a little bit sooner than that, but you don't want to be too risky, because if you bump into him, then you just die, obviously. Ideally, I probably would have dropped the lighter a little sooner, but like that's about as good as you can expect. So I found with the sword fight is like the most difficult and frustrating part of the run because of the RNG. But I found it's like basically the same speed if you hit him after you block. So like this third one, I blocked and then hit him, but I found it's like barely slower for that to happen. So that's why I kept going, even though this, I think it might be a little bit faster to not have to do that. But yeah, and that right there is like one of the biggest mistakes in the run with that movement. But yeah, getting really good at this movement on the walls, it's definitely tricky, but you can get really tight corners like that. I had really good movement in this run. See, I took that corner really tight as well. That movement could have been a little better, but that was basically perfect. This rock, throwing this pebble ended up being, yeah, that was like probably the biggest mistake in the run right there. That was pretty unhappy with that. But honestly, I'm very happy with the time at the end of the run. Yeah, this is another visual cue I used. If you got here and he was still coming up the ladder, as long as you don't mess up this pebble throw, then you should be on a good pace to get the intentional death. And with this, I found I always had to play throwing this rock pretty safe. Because if you don't play, if you're just try to be a little risky, then he almost always just tosses it early. Like if you try to move the Wii remote to the right to change his position, um, before you click A and the instructions fade away, then he always throws it immediately. It's so frustrating. And so I just always played it a little bit safe. But I did have a run once where Zach's hand barely moved to the right at all, and then I tossed it, and it still hit him. It takes like barely any time at all for Zach's hand to move from the middle to the right, which is why you can play it so safe. But it turns out he only has to move like a couple pixels to the right, and he'll still hit the snake. But this is a stressful part. Like you hope you're on a good pace, but you have to watch this cutscene and you can't skip it. And then if you have to watch Zach congratulate himself, and you can't skip that either. And you're like thinking about this movement here. Luckily, I got it pretty good. But since you're under so much pressure there, I tend to mess up that movement. Even though it's like the same thing as after you cut the rope. But yeah, I was on a really good pace here, and I could tell that I was. And this is when I clammed up and stopped talking. There was like no speaking for the rest of this run. Because I was dialed in, locked in. Yeah, so the timer isn't going during this whole menuing segment with the death, and that's why it saves time to die intentionally. Obviously, if you did this in an 80% run, it would probably be really slow. Maybe it would be a little faster because you do have to change like the whole route to make sure you get to the elevator in time when you don't have all this stuff going on. But when you're using in-game time, this saves time, and it's really cool. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's really cool that we have something like this in the game. But yeah, when I was first trying to do this route, there were so many runs where I got there and the elevator just left without me, like as soon as I got there. This is also a stressful part of the run because you're like, okay, did I get a good delay at the beginning? Like, did I mess it up? Am I going to get past him? Because if you don't have enough of a delay, you bump into him and he kills you. But you don't find out until you're like 5 minutes in. And then if you don't delay him enough, or if you delay him too much, then you have to wait for him, which is what happened at my 713s. I did get 2 of those. There's the first one, which is on YouTube, and then the second one. There's not as much to say about this because I didn't get as many runs this far in the level, so it's not as optimized. But like with everything up until the intentional death, I did it so many times that I discovered tons of little. I tried to explain as many of them as possible. Lots of little tiny tricks that saved time or made it more consistent here and there. I really know this level inside and out at this point. I don't, as far as we know, there's nothing you can do to make this go faster. Oops, I didn't mean to, oh, frick. Okay. Yeah, this is something I messed up in one run. I had a run that was on pace for a 709 like a week ago, and I messed this up, and so I had to watch like an extra cutscene for all the items to fall down and do extra walking, and it totally killed the run. But I didn't get it here. This was like the biggest relief. Once I got past this, I was like, okay, this run is real. Because I didn't make that same mistake I made with the other 709. It's kind of nice how you could just pick up the lighter, drop it there. It's pretty smooth. I really like this route. It's hard to imagine how you could make this route any better. It's just crazy to think how far this level has gone. Like even like the first run that was like really optimized, this is still like 2.5 minutes faster than the first real optimized run, which is crazy. I had really good movement to clicking on this rope there and stuff. I don't know how much it affects it. I know if you take too long, it can delay Barbaros' cycle, but I don't think it really mattered in this case, as long as you're not super slow. There's not much to say with this part. Yeah, the midair pickup here, it's pretty easy midair pickup compared to others. the dream, that's why I look over there. It's because the dream is that one day we'll get a route that's just fast enough that this bottom goon is walking to the right when you get over here. So instead of walking all the way to the left and transform that goon, you could just transform him right here. Just walk 5 steps to the right, transform him, bring him to the left. It would save a ton of time. And so if we were able to find a route that was just a little bit faster, then we could get that. Because you can see him, he's like on the right-hand side, getting ready to walk down there. But yeah, I in my 7:30, I clicked on Johnny there, so that's another stressful moment for me is making sure I don't click on Johnny. This is another place where I saved a lot of time compared to my 7:13. The other big one was just not having to wait for him because I delayed him too much in the 7:13. But here, I didn't have to like change any of my movement. I just got to the bottom, transformed him right away. Obviously, a good time save there would be to get a quick transform like I did with Rose Rock right there instead of shaking it for so long, but it didn't matter. Because I got a 709. I mean, yeah, if this run was perfect, I think it could probably get like a 706 or something. But you'd have to play pretty dang good. And obviously you could skip the cutscene later and be more risky. You get way less runs in deep, but you could save like a second there too. It's just not worth it. Like a second time save to get like 1 in a million runs this far in. Yeah, that's painful. But yeah, I was mashing minus so fast here because I just wanted to save every frame I could to make sure that I beat Imprisoned. 709 was like my lofty goal. I was going for a 711, but since I had that first run that was on 709 pace, in the back of my mind, I was like, I really want to get a 709. Like, that is where I want to take this level. Obviously, this run isn't perfect. There's still room for improvement. I explained several of my mistakes. There's some obvious movement errors here and there. But I'm really happy with this run. I'm really happy I could get it. I hope this commentary was educational. I hope it helps people who are trying to get this route in the future, because it really is a really hard route. Like, I spent like 8 hours just grinding this route and just got nowhere with it. And then after doing any percent runs and some other levels for a few weeks, coming back to it, it was way better. I got the 730 followed by the 713 really quickly. But then getting it down to 709 took a long time. But I'm really happy with this run. Thanks for watching this little video. I'm glad he could do this. I was watching Abney317 do a stream, and he did something similar to this. Like, he got world record and immediately just did a commentary on it. I don't think he uploaded it as a separate YouTube video like this is going to be. But it was, they kind of gave me this idea. And I was like, you know what? This run is so complicated, and I've learned so much about this level that I think this would be helpful to do something like this for the future. Maybe it'll age poorly. Maybe we'll discover a new route like in a day. Like maybe DXF 100 will watch the 709 and just be like, oh, it's so obvious. You can just do this. But I'm really happy with this. I feel like this is going to stand for a while unless Imprisoned comes back. Because yeah, it's good to know. I've played this level so much that I don't think anybody other than, I mean, this could age very poorly, like making claims like this. But I feel like right now, me and Imprisoned are the only people in the world capable of beating this run. And I don't want to. Imprisoned probably doesn't want to either. I mean, obviously, if DXF and Elaine put enough hours into this level, I'm sure they could get it too, but it'd take them a while. It took me so long to get this. Like, it was a mountain to climb for sure. But, I'm really happy with it. I'm really excited. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. Check out my Twitch where I stream these runs. Check out the original run where you can watch it real time with my small amount of commentary and the music and stuff. But yeah, bye.